Teddy sat on the iconic red couch, the bright studio lights casting a warm, almost unforgiving glow across the set. The polished sheen of the hardwood floor reflected the lights like a mirror, emphasizing the careful choreography of the studio, designed to showcase its high-profile guests. Teddy had been looking forward to this moment for weeks, imagining it in the quiet hours of his hotel room the night before. His latest album had been a labor of love, and his recent book, a candid memoir chronicling his journey from obscurity to fame, was his proudest accomplishment yet. Appearing on The View wasn't just a publicity opportunity, it was validation, a chance to speak directly to millions of viewers who might finally understand the man behind the music and the carefully curated public persona. He adjusted his suit, straightening the lapel with precise care, trying to quell the flutter of nerves that always accompanied appearances of this magnitude. Teddy was no stranger to the spotlight. He had performed on massive stages, given countless interviews, and even navigated heated debates in smaller talk show settings. But something about this moment felt different. The energy in the studio was electric in a way he hadn't anticipated, and not all of it was supportive. He could feel the weight of expectation, not just from his fans but from the audience, the crew, and most importantly, from the hosts themselves. From the moment the camera lights went live, Joy Behar leaned forward with her trademark smile, the kind that often concealed a razor-sharp wit and a no-nonsense approach to debate. She didn't waste time on small talk. Her first question cut right to the core of Teddy's reputation, a pointed inquiry about some of the more controversial opinions he had expressed in interviews over the past few months. Teddy took a deep breath, forcing a calmness he didn't entirely feel. He tried to answer with measured diplomacy, carefully choosing words that wouldn't ignite the inevitable friction he sensed lurking beneath the surface. But Joy wasn't having it. Her tone, while outwardly playful, carried an unmistakable edge. She leaned closer, eyes glinting with a mixture of curiosity and challenge, and pressed him further, dissecting his words with surgical precision. The audience, sensing the tension, shifted in their seats, the soft rustle of programs and coughing filling the otherwise silent studio. Teddy could feel a tightness creeping into his chest. The question wasn't just challenging, it was personal. It touched on experiences and beliefs he had kept close to his heart, issues he had tried to address in his book with honesty and nuance. He attempted a gentle smile, hoping to diffuse the situation. "I think it's important to consider context," he said, his voice steady but slightly strained. "There are layers to every decision, and I've always tried to approach my work and my public statements with integrity." Joy tilted her head, her expression a blend of amusement and skepticism. "Integrity," she echoed, her voice carrying the teasing sharpness that could either charm or wound, depending on how well one handled it. "Some would argue that your actions don't always align with your words. How do you respond to that?" Teddy's heart began to race, but he forced himself to maintain composure. He had rehearsed for moments like this, anticipating tough questions, even confrontations. Yet, the live setting, the watchful eyes of millions, and Joy's relentless probing made it feel like standing in the center of a storm. The audience leaned forward, their attention rapt, sensing that this wasn't just an interview, it was a collision. He chose his words with care, aiming to bridge the gap between honesty and diplomacy. "I understand why people might see it that way," he said. "I've faced criticism throughout my career, and sometimes it's justified. But I always aim to learn, to grow, and to make choices that reflect my true values." Joy didn't relent. She pressed further, weaving in references from recent headlines and past controversies. Each question chipped away at Teddy's patience, not because the inquiries were unreasonable, but because of the tone, an almost palpable insistence that he defend himself in a way that felt performative rather than genuine. Teddy's mind raced, analyzing the interview, calculating responses, searching for the delicate balance between composure and authenticity. The audience, sensing the rising tension, became an invisible force amplifying the pressure. Their silent gaze, punctuated by occasional gasps or murmurs, seemed to weigh on him, making the studio feel smaller, more claustrophobic. Teddy could feel the blood pounding in his temples, the rapid flutter of his heart, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hands. Every fiber of his being screamed that he needed to assert control, to reclaim the narrative before it spiraled beyond reason. He tried again, this time with a firmer tone, emphasizing his sincerity. "I've always spoken my truth," he said, leaning slightly forward to mirror Joy's intensity. "And I believe that honesty, even when uncomfortable, is the only way to move forward." Joy's eyes sparkled with a mix of challenge and amusement. "Honesty, yes, but some might call it controversial, divisive even. Isn't there a responsibility that comes with being in your position?" The word, responsibility, hit Teddy like a spark igniting a powder keg. He had faced this argument countless times, yet each repetition felt like a personal affront, a questioning of his very essence. He swallowed hard, fighting the rising frustration that threatened to spill over. He could sense the cameras capturing every micro-expression, every twitch of his jaw, every flicker of irritation. This was a performance as much as an interview, but it no longer felt like one he could control. For a brief moment, Teddy closed his eyes, summoning the calm he relied on before concerts or critical meetings. He reminded himself of the journey that had brought him here, the struggles, the sacrifices, the countless nights of doubt and perseverance. And yet, even with that grounding, the weight of the moment pressed down relentlessly. Joy's questions, while incisive, were now a gauntlet, each one demanding more than he felt he could offer without losing his composure. He took a deliberate breath, hoping to steady his voice and demeanor, but the tension had reached a tipping point. The discussion had shifted from curiosity to confrontation, from dialogue to contest. Teddy felt the heat rising in his chest, a mix of indignation and the sting of feeling misunderstood. The audience leaned in collectively, sensing the brewing storm, some murmuring quietly, others holding their breath. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, a decision crystallized in his mind. He would not allow this to continue in a manner that felt demeaning or disingenuous. He had come to share his story, not to endure a personal trial. Teddy's jaw tightened, his posture straightened, and he prepared himself for the move that would soon shock the studio, the viewers, and perhaps even himself. By the time the segment reached its apex, Teddy could feel the tension coiling inside him like a tightly wound spring, each question from Joy Behar adding pressure that demanded release. The audience had grown silent, sensing something monumental was about to unfold. Teddy's eyes scanned the studio, catching the glimpses of camera operators frozen mid-frame, the assistant producer biting her lip, and the other hosts exchanging quick, uncertain glances. Everything seemed suspended in that moment, the lights, the hum of the equipment, the very air in the room. It was as though the world itself had held its breath. Joy leaned in once more, her smile sharp, almost predatory. "So, Teddy," she said, her voice tinged with mock curiosity, "it seems some people feel your words don't always match your actions. How do you reconcile that with your public image?" Teddy's fingers tightened against the armrest of the couch. He felt a flicker of anger, followed immediately by a surge of resolve. This wasn't just about defending himself, it was about standing up for his dignity, his story, and the countless hours he had spent crafting a career built on honesty and talent. The polite, measured responses he had rehearsed seemed suddenly inadequate. He could feel the pressure building in his chest, like molten lava threatening to erupt. He leaned forward, voice firm and steady, though beneath the surface, his pulse raced. "I've faced criticism, yes," he began, "and I understand that public perception isn't always flattering. But I've always tried to live authentically. I don't owe anyone a version of myself that isn't real. I owe my truth, and that's exactly what I'm here to share." Joy's smile faltered slightly. She wasn't used to being challenged in such a direct, unapologetic manner, and for a moment, Teddy could see a flash of surprise cross her face. The audience murmured, sensing a shift. Teddy felt a small surge of satisfaction, but it was fleeting, replaced quickly by a more pressing realization: the conversation was not cooling, it was heating. "Authenticity is admirable," Joy countered, her tone sharper now, almost like a scalpel. "But don't you think public figures have a responsibility to consider the impact of their words?" Isn't there a line where freedom of expression meets accountability? Teddy's jaw tightened. The question wasn't unfamiliar. He had faced it countless times, but the intensity of the live studio setting magnified it. Every eye was on him. Every reaction, every pause, every slight change in expression would be scrutinized. He could feel the tension in his body, the rapid thrum of his heartbeat, the slight tremor in his fingers. And yet, amidst the rising storm of pressure, a clarity emerged. He realized he had a choice: continue to endure what felt like an interrogation, or reclaim control of the narrative on his own terms. The decision crystallized in his mind, decisive and unyielding. He would not allow himself to be diminished, misrepresented, or cornered for the sake of ratings or spectacle. Teddy stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the polished studio floor, a sound that seemed deafening in the sudden silence. Cameras jerked to follow him, capturing the abrupt motion in high definition. The hosts gasped, and the audience murmured in disbelief. Teddy's eyes met Joy's for a brief second, steady, unwavering, defiant, before he turned toward the exit. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but resolute, "I'm done here." The words hung in the air like a lightning strike. The audience froze, the live feed capturing every heartbeat of the moment. The other hosts called out after him, their voices a mix of concern and surprise, but Teddy ignored them. Each step toward the exit was deliberate, a statement of autonomy and self-respect. He could hear the subtle shuffle of feet, the low murmur of confusion, and even the faint click of camera lenses trying to capture every angle of his departure. As Teddy reached the studio door, he could feel the mixture of adrenaline and relief washing over him. The moment of confrontation, which had begun with polite discourse and escalated to personal challenge, was now over. On his own terms. Behind him, the hosts tried to regain composure, exchanging hurried whispers, while the audience remained in stunned silence, some clapping cautiously, others still processing the shock. Once outside the studio, the cool air hit him like a bomb, clearing the tension from his lungs and grounding him. Teddy walked briskly down the hallway, the echo of his footsteps mingling with the faint hum of distant cameras and crew members tidying up after the abrupt exit. His mind raced, replaying the interaction, analyzing every detail, the sharp edge in Joy's tone, the audience's reactions, the subtle gestures that had escalated the confrontation. And yet, despite the adrenaline and lingering frustration, there was a profound sense of liberation. He had asserted his truth, drawn a line, and walked away with his dignity intact. Meanwhile, social media erupted almost instantly. Clips of Teddy's dramatic exit went viral within minutes. Fans and critics alike flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with reactions, debates, and heated discussions. Some hailed him as a hero, applauding his courage and refusal to be diminished on national television. Others criticized his behavior, labeling it impulsive or unprofessional. News outlets quickly picked up the story, running headlines about the unprecedented departure, analyzing the subtle tensions that had led to the confrontation. The event became a cultural moment, dissected, debated, and shared across countless platforms. Teddy, however, paid little attention to the immediate noise. He stepped into a waiting car, the city lights reflecting off the sleek exterior, and allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The confrontation had been intense, yes, but it was also a reminder of why he had pursued his career: to share his authentic voice, to connect with others through his experiences, and to stand firmly in his truth, no matter the audience or setting. As the car pulled away, Teddy's thoughts drifted back to the book, the music, and the countless hours of effort that had brought him to this point. The clash with Joy Behar would be remembered, dissected, and debated, but for him, it was merely a chapter in a larger story, one of resilience, authenticity, and the unyielding pursuit of self-respect. He knew the headlines would dominate the next few days, perhaps weeks, but he also knew that walking away had been the most powerful statement he could make. And so, as the city lights blurred past, Teddy allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He had faced confrontation, endured scrutiny, and emerged on his own terms. In that moment, he realized something profound. Sometimes, the bravest act is not to fight, but to walk away with dignity, leaving the world to respond as it may. The memory of the studio, the tension, the questions, the heat of the moment, would linger, but it would not define him. Teddy had reclaimed his narrative, and in doing so, had reminded the world why his voice mattered.